Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Politics in Washington. The Affordable Care Act defying the Obama administration right now. That is the president's choice. It's on me. And so, therefore, we begin tonight with the Affordable Care Act. There is news. It is not hard news, but it is suggestive because the spokesperson for the White House, Mr. Carney, is making remarks about plans the Obama administration has to bypass healthcare.gov, bypass the website. It is not in detail now, but the Wall Street Journal moved a report earlier this afternoon that the plan or the intention or the ambition is to permit, that is to say, to guide consumers to directly to the healthcare insurers themselves for prices for plans. And I think the suggestion is you then provide your email and they'll email you back with plans and more details. It resembles, it's not unlike the way OFA worked once upon a time. When I gave $5 to the OFA, this is early in 2011 or 2012, I can't remember what year. I gave them my email. So I was then getting emails 5 or 6 or 7 times a morning from everyone, the president, the vice president, the family pet, everyone. And that might be a piece of it. They want your email, but they also want you to connect directly to the insurers. Implicit in this, of course, is that healthcare.gov is not on schedule. John Fund of the National Review Online and David Rucker of Washington Examiner are here, my professionals. David has a piece up that we're going to get to right away because it's breaking news about Robert Wilkins, a nominee to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, and his fate so far before the U.S. Senate. But I begin with Mr. Carney's remarks this afternoon. Mr. Fund, a very good evening to you. It looks like the healthcare.gov site right now is not going to deliver as of November 30th, that all of the careful, caged, ambiguous words used this last month have come to bypass. Do you register this as a defeat for the Obama White House? Are they acknowledging they've failed? Good evening to you, John.
They will never acknowledge they failed. This is a sidestep to try to reduce expectations and media criticism. The Obama website will continue to stay up despite its security hazardous condition because they can't afford the embarrassment of taking it down. But it will largely be a portal. People will shop around a little bit. They'll insert their information. They'll have the insurers get back to them. In other words, it will be a crippled ship sailing the seas, afloat but non-functional.
David, I go immediately to the news that you've posted that's posted up on the Washington Examiner site, because this, though it is not an Affordable Care Act, this is about the conversation ongoing between the Hill, the Congress, and the Obama administration, and the rejection of Robert Wilkins, a nominee by the president for the U.S. Court of Appeals. And suddenly there's nuclear option threat again. Is there blood in the water? That's an old metaphor from the Nixon years, but is everything now a fight? And does everything immediately go to extremes because of this atmosphere of the president's disappointment? Good evening, David.
Good evening, John. And this has been going on for quite a while. And I think what you can expect that after Thanksgiving, the Democrats are going to talk more about invoking the so-called nuclear option, which would be to change the rules with a bare majority of the Senate in order to prevent the filibuster of judges. I do think it's possible at this point, particularly because Democrats really want to change the subject from the Affordable Care Act and motivate their base. The Democratic base isn't that thrilled at the moment. They're worried because of the troubled rollout of the Affordable Care Act. And for Republicans who essentially backed down from a nuclear option confrontation during the summer, that was not about judges, but there was still some consternation among Republicans that what good is the filibuster, what good is saving the filibuster, rather, if we're not going to be able to use it. And judges is something that they simply can't back down from. And right now I think the appetite among Democrats to go forward potentially with a nuclear option on the judicial issue is probably bigger, just given where the party is right now with the health care law.
Thank you, David. Mr. Fund, we took that sidebar to the nuclear option because that's tough talk on the Hill. And I want to know your opinion, John, because we're doing analysis here. Do you believe that the Affordable Care Act and the president's presentation last Thursday and the poor polls, that has made things more disagreeable, if that's possible, more likely to go to hot tempers on the Hill, John?
All of this is in relation to the likelihood that Republicans can pick up enough seats to control the Senate. And, of course, that would change the entire dynamic of the last 2 years of the Obama administration. So to the extent that Democrats are looking for any kind of grapple hook on the Republicans to try to stave off a Senate loss, they will take it. And so the next year is going to be completely non-legislative. It will be pure politics all the way through.
Oh, that's the way we like it, Mr. Fund. David, you're back, and I want you to comment on Mr. Carney's remarks this afternoon. It's puzzling because David's not here yet. John, I want to stay with this because we are now reading the Affordable Care Act, the details of it. I do, very carefully. And you introduced me to Bruce Webster of the, and still I persist, an IT expert. And I'll speak to him later tonight because IT recognizes the problem the Obama administration is in and the tangle they've got themselves in by overpromising and not understanding the intractability of a failed website. Just your thoughts, John. Do you think, as the Affordable Care Act gets worse and worse, that we'll see stranger and odder and more inexplicable and cantankerous and spontaneous conduct in Washington? Or is there some point this will calm down? Will Christmas calm them down, John?
Oh, temporarily, because Congress will be out of session, but not for the long haul. I had dinner with 2 United States senators tonight here in New York, and both of them see incredible strain and stress on the part of their moderate Democratic colleagues up for election in 2014 from states that Romney largely carried. I'm told that Mary Landrieu, the senator from Louisiana, is facing devastating polls that unless she continues to break with the Obama administration on Obamacare and other issues, she's heading for defeat. So my view is the story is not any disagreements within the Republican Party. Those will persist. The story is the underreported issue of the Democrats in the Senate, and when they break and when they move en masse to declare their independence from the Obama administration because they can no longer believe what they're told. They were told the website would be fixed on November 30th. Turning it over to the insurance companies, which the Democrats have bashed for 60 years, is not a solution to Democrats. It is a surrender to the insurance companies, and they will have to say, who do we trust? We can't trust the White House. We have to trust our own instincts publicly.
Mr. Drucker, we have you back, not on Skype, but on your cell phone. Your thoughts, David, about the Senate. John makes the points about the 2014 election. Of course, that dominates if you're going for re-election. Do you think the Affordable Care Act has made it very difficult for these senators to act in any fashion but to save themselves? Is that where we are tonight, David?
Well, I think we're very close to that, and I think a lot of this has to do with exactly how well the Obama administration can sell a website victory in a couple of weeks. As you've discussed, and I agree, they're going to declare victory no matter what the situation is. And so if they can convince Senate Democrats that it's doing well enough, I think you'll see a sort of at least temporary, immediate sigh of relief, and they'll try and move on to sell this thing as promised, that it's been delivered now as promised, just with a big hiccup. And so it sort of depends on everything else, in my view, that has really caused problems and overshadowed the website, the cancel plans, and all the other issues that go to White House credibility that rub off on congressional Democrats in a negative fashion. And I think that we'll really know more when we get back in January. And that's assuming that they're going to sell the website as a victory because they'll somehow be able to say it's good enough.
I'm not convinced right now, David, from what I know, that you can sell this website as a victory. That's why I'm puzzled about Mr. Carney's remarks this afternoon. And also we're reading now that the president's recommendation last Thursday is not workable. The idea that in some fashion people Well, he proposed sort of catch as catch can last week. Some states are going to acknowledge it, some states are not. It's a puzzle whether the cancellation plans will be restored, whether there'll be opportunities, whether you'll be held accountable. And David, you used the word credibility. That's what I want to read from you. You're on the Hill every day. The president says something and it doesn't happen. And then he says something else and it doesn't happen. That undermines the whole party, correct? The Democrats are infected by this doubt.
They are, and that's why I've actually focused more on the broken promise than I have, at least over the past week, on the website. The website got the ball rolling, if you will, with the political problem, but it's the loss of credibility that will rub off on congressional Democrats if we get into next year, the election year, and things don't get better. I mean, don't forget, the last time we had a president whose party suffered in a midterm year, it wasn't just the policies that didn't go right, it was the complete loss of credibility.
Right.
And voters said, you're with him, and we've had enough of him, so we've had enough of you.
David Drucker of Washington Examiner, John Fund of the National Review Online. When we come back, the White House talking to its own supporters, the Organizing for America. The White House, that's who it's pitching now. The President of the United States, his voice to his own supporters. There's no election upcoming. What does this tell us about the poll numbers? And are the Republicans in this game, or is it just all Democrats worrying and right now doubting the White House? I'm John Batchelor.